Have you ever seen a concert stage become more than just a place to sing, but an epicenter for the destruction and reconstruction of global fashion? As the curtain rises on the 2026 World Tour, the American fashion industry officially faces a major anomaly that forces Hollywood celebrities to conform to new aesthetic standards. Number 9. The architectural avant-garde Teyana Taylor. Following her futuristic silver sci-fi performance at the 2026 American Music Awards, where she emerged from an alien pod for her track, All of Your Heart, multi-hyphenate artist and renowned style icon Teyana Taylor became one of the first major U.S. figures to dissect the structural evolution of BTS's 2026 Arirang World Tour wardrobe. Known for her own boundary-pushing stage aesthetics and sharp eye for choreography-driven fashion, Taylor publicly analyzed the construction of the Lyrical Armor archetype featured heavily in the tour's visual lineup. Developed in part with avant-garde Korean designers like Jae-sung. These specific stage outfits rejected the standard Western pop star formula of loose, high-glitz streetwear or traditional hyper-masculine tailoring, opting instead for heavy asymmetrical lines, structured deconstructed blazers, and fabric wraps modeled after traditional Korean clothing structures paired with modern industrial materials like denim and leather. Taylor explicitly pointed out how the tailoring was meticulously engineered to hold razor-sharp silhouettes during explosive choreographies, such as the live broadcasted performance of Hooligan from Allegiant Stadium, without restricting athletic mobility. She noted that the American hip-hop and R&B fashion landscape has historically relied on oversized cuts or heavily jewel-encrusted statement pieces to command stadium-sized attention. But the structural precision seen on BTS introduced a new standard of moving architecture to U.S. stylists. By blending rigorous structural geometry with fluid, traditional wrapping techniques, the tour's wardrobe proved to Western designers that stage clothing could be highly technical, deeply cultural, and aggressively modern all at once. Taylor's detailed breakdown shifted the conversation among Hollywood creative directors, signaling a clear departure from standard Western luxury tropes toward highly customized, culturally rooted structural fashion that changes how an artist commands physical space on stage. What happens when this new blueprint falls into the hands of one of the most unapologetic rock legends in American history? Number 8. The vanguard of heavy rock, Lenny Kravitz. Known globally for his signature combination of classic rock excess, vintage leather, and an unshakable adherence to retro bohemian luxury, four-time Grammy winner Lenny Kravitz took to his personal channels and backstage press interviews during his mid-2026 European and festival run to address the sheer scale of the wardrobe dominating BTS's Arirang World Tour. Kravitz, who has spent more than 3 decades executing a flawless fusion of rock, soul, and funk while acting as a living blueprint for American rock star fashion, bypassed the standard surface-level compliments to focus intently on the structural weight and fabric integrity of the garments worn during the tour's heavy-hitting sets. He noted that while Western stadium tours traditionally look back to the leather-heavy, shredded, or maximalist glitz pioneered by 1970s and 1980s rock icons, the BTS 2026 tour established a completely different thesis for what dominance on a stadium stage looks like. In particular, Kravitz pointed out the subversion of classic American streetwear and utilitarian elements, highlighting how the group discarded standard Western luxury brands for their massive opening shows in favor of custom-engineered pieces by Korean designer Jae-sung. The garments, often categorized under the Lyrical Armor aesthetic, utilized rigid, asymmetrical lines, heavy layered cotton wraps, and structured technical blazers that maintained their precise, aggressive geometry even under the intense physical duress of continuous choreography. For a rock pioneer like Kravitz, whose own wardrobe relies on fluid movement, open-chested silhouettes, and heavy, treated skins, the ability of these modern Korean designs to project an intense, armor-like authority without sacrificing flexibility or resorting to standard military tropes was a massive revelation. He remarked that the collection proved how technical precision and cultural historical references could be synthesized into a look that feels more threateningly modern than the standard leather jackets and denim that have defined the American music industry for half a century. By blending the fluid drapery of traditional Eastern attire with heavy industrial textures like raw denim and treated leather, the tour's visual presentation actively challenged the traditional Western ideas of hypermasculine stage wear. This endorsement from a certified rock and fashion purist didn't just validate the technical execution of the tour's wardrobe. It signaled a massive shift in how the upper echelons of the American rock and alternative scenes view the intersection of pop performance, structural tailoring, and stage presence. But while a rock legend focuses on the heavy structure and artistic weight of the garments, how does a modern pop powerhouse react when these exact same design rules completely rewrite the script for massive corporate partnerships and mainstream global street fashion? Number 7. The mainstream pop pioneer, Dua Lipa. Standing at the absolute peak of the global dance pop landscape and serving as a longtime muse for elite European fashion houses, Dua Lipa used a series of high-profile roundtable discussions and behind-the-scenes tour vlogs in mid-2026 to break down the massive commercial and aesthetic impact of the Arirang World Tour wardrobe. Having spent years headlining her own massive stadium runs wrapped in high-glitz, bodycon, and sparkling archival pieces from standard Western luxury brands, Lipa approached the phenomenon from the perspective of a seasoned pop professional who understands the brutal physical demands of a global tour. She focused heavily on the tech traditionalism aspect of the wardrobe, specifically analyzing how the tour successfully married high-performance, athletic utility with high-fashion Korean heritage design. Lipa pointed out that while Western pop star wardrobes for major tours are traditionally designed to project a heavily polished, highly stylized version of everyday streetwear or glamorous club culture, BTS's 2026 tour completely flipped the script by treating stage as a form of elite, custom-engineered gear that actively tells a historical story. She was particularly fascinated by the group's ability to execute complex, high-velocity choreography while wearing layered, asymmetrical blazers and structure coats that featured traditional Korean tailoring elements, like the wraparound silhouettes reminiscent of hanbok, but rendered in heavy, modern technical fabrics that absorb sweat and allow for maximum range of motion. Lipa openly admitted to her creative team that this level of functional storytelling has set an incredibly intimidating new benchmark for Western pop artists, who are now forced to rethink their reliance on standard, off-the-rack luxury aesthetics that prioritize visual flash over structural innovation and deep cultural resonance. She noted that the tour's visual direction proved that a pop star's wardrobe can be intensely intellectual and deeply tied to national identity without losing an ounce of its global, chart-topping commercial appeal. This realization sent shockwaves through the styling teams of major American and European pop acts, sparking an immediate rush to collaborate with independent East Asian designers who understand how to balance traditional craftsmanship with cutting-edge textile technology. But while a pop diva looks at the stage through the lens of athletic performance and high-fashion utility, how does the ultimate vanguard of the American hip-hop underground react when these exact same garments completely redefine the rules of street credibility and raw urban style? Number 6. The hip-hop multi-hyphenate and streetwear icon, A$AP Rocky. Renowned throughout the global fashion ecosystem as a relentless tastemaker who bridges the gap between gritty Harlem street style and elite European haute couture, A$AP Rocky utilized his mid-2026 appearance at a major Los Angeles fashion symposium to dissect the profound impact of BTS's Arirang World Tour wardrobe. Rocky, whose career is defined by his ability to predict and weaponize subterranean fashion trends before they hit the mainstream American consciousness, focused his critique entirely on the tour's masterful manipulation of subverted workwear and traditional silhouettes. He specifically highlighted how the styling team for the tour rejected the prevailing Western hip-hop aesthetic, which has long been dominated by oversized, hyper-branded luxury sportswear and literal vintage military surplus, and instead engineered a completely new genre of deconstructed utility. This approach took elements of rugged, industrial textiles like raw Korean denim, heavy canvas, and reinforced technical webbing, and fused them with the precise, fluid geometry of historical Korean robes and wraps. For Rocky, this wasn't just a clever styling choice. It was a direct challenge to the American street fashion establishment, which has historically dictated terms to the rest of the world. He analyzed a specific segment of the tour, where the members performed in asymmetrical, multi-pocketed utility vests layered over beautifully draped, long-line silk tunics, noting that the contrast between heavy structural weight and ethereal movement created a visual tension that Western designers have rarely managed to execute with such effortless masculine authority. He openly admitted that the tour's visual directors had successfully decentered Western-centric streetwear tropes, forcing American designers to realize that true innovation in urban fashion is currently coming from Seoul rather than Paris, Milan, or New York. By treating traditional cultural garments not as historical artifacts, but as living, breathing blueprints for futuristic street armor, BTS effectively rewired the DNA of global streetwear, leaving American hip-hop's elite scrambling to adapt to a new standard of cross-cultural technical luxury. This public breakdown from one of hip-hop's most uncompromising style purists forced a radical re-evaluation of street credibility across the entire U.S. music industry. But if a pioneer of the underground streets is forced to acknowledge this massive aesthetic shift, how does the ultimate arbiter of American high-fashion editorial design react when these same garments begin to threaten the very foundation of Hollywood's most exclusive red carpets? Number 5. The high-fashion metamorphosis icon, Zendaya, dominating international red carpets with an unmatched editorial precision and acting as the definitive muse for historical fashion houses like Schiaparelli and Mugler. Zendaya used an exclusive 2026 industry panel on red carpet trends to articulate how BTS's Arirang World Tour completely dismantled the traditional rules of celebrity styling. Working alongside her longtime image architect Laura Roach, Zendaya has built her entire legacy on method dressing, aligning her promotional wardrobes perfectly with the conceptual narratives of her films, from the sci-fi armor of the Dune press tours to the sleek minimalism of her early 2026 appearances. Because of this deep technical understanding of clothing as a narrative tool, she focused her critique entirely on the historical futurity displayed in the tour's custom wardrobe. Zendaya analyzed how the styling bypassed the standard Western industry formula of using celebrity fashion strictly for high glitz shock value, choosing instead to execute a seamless, hyper-complex dialogue between ancient Korean history and futuristic cyberpunk silhouettes. She specifically noted the use of traditional naragi knots and hand-embroidered Joseon-era patterns subtly integrated into highly structural, liquid metal tech fabrics and asymmetrical blazers, marking it as a masterclass in visual storytelling that most Hollywood design teams fail to achieve. For Zendaya, the tour proved that an artist does not have to choose between deep cultural reverence and hyper-modern global commercial appeal. Rather, the two can be fused into a striking, unified armor that commands the attention of an entire stadium. She openly stated to industry stylists that the flawless technical execution of these garments has raised the bar so high that standard, off-the-rack Western luxury gowns and traditional black tie suits now feel remarkably flat and lacking in conceptual depth by comparison. By demonstrating that clothing can function simultaneously as elite athletic performance gear and museum-grade historical art, the tour's visual direction forced a massive re-evaluation of how Hollywood's elite approach red carpet and promotional fashion. This public acknowledgement from the undisputed queen of modern editorial style effectively signaled the end of simple, superficial glamour in the American entertainment industry. But while the master of red carpet narrative reacts to this cultural shift, how does a literal titan of pop theatricality and avant-garde chaos react when these exact same design principles enter the realm of pure, unadulterated performance art? Number 4. The architect of avant-garde pop theatricality, Lady Gaga. Having spent her entire legendary career transforming the global music landscape into a living canvas for extreme surrealism, raw performance art, and confrontational haute couture, 13-time Grammy winner and Oscar-winning actress Lady Gaga used a series of high-level creative direction symposia in mid-2026 to dissect the pure theatrical philosophy of the Arirang World Tour's wardrobe. Gaga, who famously rewrote the rulebook of Western pop culture by weaponizing garments made of raw meat, structural geometry, and boundary-pushing silhouettes from legendary houses like Alexander McQueen and Mugler, approached the BTS tour wardrobe not merely as a collection of stage clothes, but as a profound manifestation of somatic surrealism. She focused intensely on how the collection rejected the standard, highly predictable Western pop star formula, which historically relies on hypersexualized bodycon suits, generic high-glit streetwear, or literal retro pastiche, and instead embraced an aggressive, highly intellectual form of garment engineering. Gaga specifically highlighted the tour's brilliant manipulation of negative space and fabric weight, pointing out how the custom-designed, multi-layered coats and structural hanbok infused silhouettes created by avant-garde Korean designers moved in absolute, eerie synchronization with the performer's physical biology. For Gaga, the true genius lay in the subversion of materials. She analyzed the segment where traditional, hand-woven Korean silk and organic linens were seamlessly fused with ultra-modern, liquid metal technical fabrics and reflective industrial polymers that reacted dynamically to the tour's massive stadium laser arrays. She remarked to her own House Labs creative team that this level of material duality achieved something Western pop fashion has long struggled to master. A garment that acts as a physical extension of the artist's psychological state, functioning simultaneously as high-concept museum art and elite, high-velocity performance armor. Gaga openly admitted that the flawless execution of this wardrobe effectively exposed the current state of Western pop styling as creatively stagnant and overly reliant on commercial luxury brand partnerships that prioritize corporate logo placement over raw artistic risk. By proving that a global stadium tour can be anchored by deeply academic, culturally specific, and structurally confrontational fashion without losing an ounce of its massive commercial dominance, BTS fundamentally shattered the traditional boundaries of pop theatricality. This fierce critique from the ultimate matriarch of avant-garde pop didn't just rattle the Western fashion establishment. It issued an undeniable ultimatum to every creative director in Hollywood to completely abandon superficial glamour in favor of deep, uncompromising conceptual narrative. But while a pioneer of pure theatrical chaos celebrates the intellectual and artistic rebirth of the stage garment, how does a literal global monarch of contemporary R&B and ultimate master of international stadium presentation react when these exact same design rules completely redefine the meaning of absolute visual dominance? Number 3, the sovereign of stadium grandeur, Beyoncé. Having spent decades constructing the definitive blueprint for high-octane American pop and R&B presentation, most notably through her historic multi-city renaissance and cowboy Carter runs that turned global stadiums into high-fashion runways for houses like Balmain, Mugler, and Schiaparelli, Beyoncé utilized an exclusive, behind-the-scenes look into her creative production house in late 2026 to deliver an incredibly clinical evaluation of the Arirang World Tour's wardrobe architecture. Operating not just as a vocalist, but as the ultimate executive producer of modern live entertainment, she bypassed the superficial aesthetic commentary that typically dominates social media to focus entirely on the unprecedented logistical and structural engineering behind the collection. Beyoncé specifically highlighted the fluid kinetic mechanics of the stage where, dissecting how the group's design team managed to maintain an uncompromising haute couture silhouette under the extreme, continuous G-force of high-velocity stadium choreography. She analyzed the specific segment of the tour where the performers transitioned from intense, military-grade synchronization into deeply emotive vocal sets, pointing out that the garments, constructed from a hyper-complex synthesis of traditional Korean raimi, structured raw silk, and high-tensile industrial polymer blends. Never bunched, tore, or lost their aggressive geometric lines. For a perfectionist who famously demands dozens of custom, high-performance costume iterations for a single tour, Beyoncé openly marveled at how these outfits managed to project absolute, armor-like masculine authority while retaining the ethereal, windswept drapery of historical Josian-era attire. She remarked to her internal styling team that the Western approach to stadium luxury has historically prioritized rigid, heavily jeweled bodices or loose, branded sportswear, both of which represent a compromise between visual flash and athletic functionality. The Arirang wardrobe, however, established a terrifyingly high benchmark by proving that a garment could be structurally experimental, deeply historical, and perfectly optimized for elite physical endurance all at once. By completely decentering the traditional European and American luxury houses that have long held a monopoly over stadium pop culture, the tour forced Western creative directors to realize that the future of massive-scale visual dominance is being dictated by the technical masterclasses coming out of East Asian design studios. This public acknowledgement from the undisputed monarch of live performance didn't just validate the wardrobe's aesthetic merit. It sent a seismic shockwave through the entire infrastructure of American tour production, demanding a complete overhaul of how pop royalty dresses for the stage. But while the definitive ruler of the stadium pop landscape analyzes the technical engineering and kinetic mastery of these garments, how does a literal god of contemporary hip-hop production and the absolute pioneer of minimalist industrial design react when these same outfits completely dismantle his own theories on modern visual minimalism? Number 2, the architect of minimalist industrial design, Kanye West. Having spent more than 2 decades systematically tearing down and rebuilding the structural foundations of both the global music industry and international street fashion through his hyper-minimalist, post-apocalyptic utilitarian aesthetics, multi-hyphenate visionary Kanye West took to an exclusive, unedited late-night industry stream in late 2026 to deliver an incredibly intense, highly analytical breakdown of the Arirang World Tour's wardrobe architecture. West, whose own historic design legacy relies on stripping away all superficial ornamentation to focus entirely on raw, organic textures, muted earth tones, and aggressive, oversized silhouettes that look as though they were pulled from a dystopian wasteland, bypassed the standard pop culture praise to focus on what he called the monastic militarism of the collection. He analyzed the specific segment of the tour where the performers emerged in heavy, deconstructed outerwear that beautifully blended the fluid drapes of ancient Korean military subarmor with ultra-modern, high-performance tactical nylon and treated industrial canvas. For a design purist who has spent years trying to perfect the ultimate utilitarian uniform for the modern masses, West openly admitted that the tour's visual directors had successfully solved the design equation that Western streetwear has been stuck on for a generation. How to make a garment look intensely ancient, deeply spiritual, and threateningly futuristic all at the exact same time. He pointed out the complete absence of loud, corporate Western logo placement and the brilliant reliance on raw structural geometry, noting that the asymmetrical lines and hidden fastening systems, inspired by traditional Korean clothing mechanics, completely exposed the current state of American luxury streetwear as lazy, overbranded, and creatively bankrupt. West remarked to his design team that by utilizing independent East Asian textile innovators who understand how to treat raw materials as living art rather than mass-produced commodities, BTS didn't just style a concert. They effectively built a physical temple of modern garment engineering that renders the entire Western fashion establishment obsolete. This explosive, unvarnished critique from one of the most polarizing and influential figures in modern design history didn't just validate the tour's aesthetic dominance. It issued a direct, uncompromising challenge to the entire billionaire-backed infrastructure of Western high fashion, forcing every major creative studio to reckon with a new era of spiritual industrialism. But as the ultimate king of minimalist subversion concedes defeat to this new Eastern blueprint, which legendary figures stand at the absolute peak of the global fashion pyramid, ready to deliver the final, definitive verdict on how this tour permanently rewrote the laws of style? Number 1. The ultimate empress of contemporary fashion journalism and global Vogue metamorphosis, Anna Wintour. Sitting at the absolute pinnacle of the international fashion hierarchy as the long-standing chief content officer of Condé Nast and the definitive arbiter of global style trends, Anna Wintour utilized an unprecedented, highly academic editorial essay and an exclusive 2026 Post-Fashion Week Summit to deliver the final, definitive verdict on the Arirang World Tour wardrobe. Wintour, who has spent decades executing absolute institutional control over what is deemed culturally significant across the red carpets of the Met Gala and the pages of global fashion Bibles, discarded the usual superficial industry praise to analyze the tour through the lens of a complete geopolitical power shift in haute couture. She explicitly termed the collection the Seoul Renaissance, documenting how the meticulous integration of traditional Korean craftsmanship, specifically the utilization of centuries-old Saekdong color theories, hand-woven geometry structural lines, and natural, mineral-dyed organic silks, fused seamlessly with ultra-modern, high-tensile technical polymers and liquid metal fabrics. Wintour pointed out that while Western fashion capitals like Paris, Milan, and New York have spent the last decade trapped in a cynical cycle of archival repetition, nostalgic pastiche, and over-branded commercial streetwear, the visual direction of BTS's 2026 tour established a terrifyingly advanced blueprint for the future of the luxury industry. She analyzed how the custom garments, engineered in collaboration with visionary South Korean designers, completely bypassed the traditional Eurocentric luxury conglomerates to establish a new standard of monolithic cultural armor that commands stadium-sized physical space while retaining museum-grade historical integrity. Wintour openly warned Western design houses that their historic monopoly over the global luxury market has officially been broken, as the tour proved that the most conceptually rigorous, technologically advanced, and emotionally resonant fashion is no longer being dictated by the West, but is instead flowing directly from the creative epicenters of East Asia. This final, sweeping endorsement from the world's most formidable fashion gatekeeper didn't just validate a concert wardrobe. It officially codified the Arirang World Tour as the exact historical turning point where the axis of global style permanently shifted toward Seoul.